Again, with very transparent color, let's cover our canvas, and this time we can pick. What color do you want to pick? Is something going on still? I don't know. All right, so let's cover our canvas with yellow. No, do you have turquoise? Let's do a little experimentation. Do you guys have that turquoise that I have right here? So that is a nice cool color. So we're gonna have a little contrast with a very cool underpainting and a warm color on top. So very, very lightly, I mean lightly enough to have a medium value. I'm just going over this. And let me know really if you hear any sound, because I'm gonna try to do something with my computer. Alright, so kind of a medium value. If you have turquoise, that's gonna be great. If you don't, just try any cool tone like a cobalt blue or any blue. I know it's complete contrast to what we see, but that is going to be a very, very nice approach. You will see. It's just gonna create some interesting situation. Okay. And again, the reason why I picked this reference photo is because I really love the contrast, as always. So I like to see dark and I like to see light. So we have a nice range, and also I like the very refined work here on that bridge. Of course, that's the only man-made object in the picture, and it's going to be a little bit more organized. We'll be more careful when we paint that. Everything else will be again chaotic and fun, and we'll do the whole technique with the rays of the sun. So it will be wonderful. Let me know when you're ready. I even cover the sides of my canvas too, but you don't have to. So it should be nice and light. Good. I'm not hearing anything talking. That's good. That's a good thing. And it's very helpful if you have a large brush. I have this big brush from Home Depot, you know, $1.50, I don't know, $3, something like that. It's very helpful. I use it for everything, including oil painting, underpainting, anything that's larger and requires a very quick approach and coverage. So, and sometimes you can use it for some textures really, because it's not a good quality brush. It's actually bad, terrible brush. But as long as the hair doesn't fall apart, that's all I need really. And it can create some amazing textures. So that's gonna be our nice underpainting. You can pop in some yellow if you want in some areas here, maybe here. So we have a little bit of a tone. But yeah, we'll experiment with that. And hopefully that dries fast. Let me know when you're ready. I'll put this here on the side.
I finished my under.
Okay, perfect. All right, so let's just do a little quick sketch of thinking about our composition. So think about, again, sizes and scale. So pretty much the bridge We're gonna start somewhere in the middle, and it's gonna take about 2/3 to the right. And let's mix a darker color. So I'm taking this purple and I'm gonna draw with purple now. So this nice purple tone. And I'm just gonna mark right here where I think the top of the bridge is. So when you look at it proportionately, it's slightly above the center. So I kind of mark this, and my background is still wet, which is fine. That's perfectly okay. So I'm just marking where my bridge is going to be, because that's kind of a central thing in the composition. It's not very thick, so the height wise, so the height is about this, and then we have this kind of a nice curve to it, and then it goes over here. Alright, so this is just to kind of mark our perimeters. Then we will have a tree over here. Then there is another one over here, and again very roughly. Here they will have another brush like bushes. Some lighter trees behind. This is just for placement. This is all going to be covered. Then there is just again for placement another tree, couple of trees here. Again darker bushes, and 2 trees kind of tilted this way. Yeah, my drawing disappears because my background is still wet. I think I used too much water. Sometimes if you use too much water for this underpainting, may take a little bit of time to dry, but it looks almost like watercolor. Really, it's interesting. So this is again just for placement, nothing to worry about. Make sure, yeah, you have it correctly placed, and then there will be this interesting reflection here. So yeah, that's gotta be it. Kind of want to dab a little bit some of this color. And it leaves interesting texture when you dab it with your paper towel. Almost looking like watercolor technique, really. Just be very sketchy, very free. Takes about 2/3, as I mentioned, like left to right. And we're just figuring out the sizes and mapping up where things are, mapping out, and I'm kind of going over it again because it disappears a little bit, so that's okay, some of the stuff. So if you guys ready with the sketch, see how rough it is. It's really rough. We are ready to start laying our darks, and as always we start with the darks. Squint our eyes. Squinting eyes help determining value, and instead of getting lost with detail, we're just gonna start mapping the big picture as always. So I'm taking one of my big flat brushes. See, it's about, how big is it? It's about 2 inches, I think. So I'm gonna use this brush, and I'm going to paint the darks, and the big darks are obviously here where the ground is, some of the reflection on the left, just very roughly. And the color will be, let's pick a nice interesting red, like red and purple. Mix that red and purple, is going to create a nice dark value. If you have indigo, let me put some indigo here. My palette doesn't have indigo, so I'm gonna squeeze some indigo here. That's going to be the color of our shadows. Oh, just flew somewhere else. Okay, that's good. So purple, red, and some indigo, just to get some darker shade. If you don't have indigo, you can pop in some black if you want, but just make sure you put some red in it. So should be dark. And very, very rough. I'm putting some, again, mapping, squinting your eyes, looking at the big picture. I know it's dark over here, kind of a line. Then it's gonna be dark over here. Get some red so it's not so purple if you want. And again, big brush strokes. Don't worry about exactly what shape that reflection is. I know this whole side is gonna be a little bit darker. And I'm just popping in some red too right away. And I know here we have this reflection of the bridge. Don't worry about details again. Here is another dark. And there is another dark right here on the left where all the bushes are. So remember, shadows are cool. That's why I'm using purple. And I'm mixing some red because that's kind of the overall look and feel. So, and I'm also mixing some indigo to even darken it a little bit more. So just adding some more. And there's very dark area here right under that bridge. Again, very rough. Just really kind of dabbing at this point very roughly. And I'm not painting these dark trees in the very front yet because I want to start painting from the very back forward. So now that we have this foreground, the dark value in the foreground, you can maybe add a bit of color. How about popping some red? You can still have some of this green show up, the turquoise, but with just a dry brush, just go over it and get some color. So it's not all some purple everywhere. Okay, let me know if you're ready, and we're going to start with the painting the background going forward in the forest area. And the very last will be the bridge and the dark trees in the very front. So I'm grabbing a bit softer brush. This brush is really hard, so I'm getting the softer brush. So all these orange and yellows that you see in your reference, we're going to add them with our palette knife later, eventually, and that's going to really pop our painting. But for now, we're just indicating the darks. And here's some bushes. Don't worry about them because, as I said, we will add those later when we come forward. At the very back. Okay. I'm just drying some of my background a little bit. Here, you with your paper towel, if you dab on it, here where the brushes are, you can have some interesting texture right away. Just dab with your paper towel and create some texture right away. But we'll get to it. This is too early for that now. So when you look at your reference, think about 3 layers basically. There's one layer all the way in the back that's going to be light yellow, nothing too distinct, a little bit yellow orange, but it's going to be soft. because it's far, far away. So whatever we see of these trees, let me put my reference right here, all these trees in the back, that's layer 1 all the way in the back. Then it's going to be a middle layer, one in the middle. There is another tree here, it's going to be more orange colors, and one that's foreground is where these dark trees are, and all these brushes, and of course our bridge and reflection. So 3 layers kind of put on top of each other. We're going to start with the one that is in the very back. If you guys ready, we're going to start mixing those colors. And I'm going to take, let me see how we're doing, 6:20. Okay, so we have time. Just want to make sure we have everything. So I'm grabbing some yellow, mixing it with orange, nice yellow, warm yellow, and some white here with the corner of my brush, and just start laying out this color. It's okay if you leave some of this green showing through. It's an interesting technique, sometimes having a cool background with a warm foreground, or vice versa. If you put a warm background, have a cool foreground. These are just little tricks of the trade that I'm telling you, but we're just experimenting today, so we're doing a bit of everything. So right now I'm grabbing yellow, orange, and white, and having this medium warm value for my very first layer in the background. Don't paint too thickly. Again, continue with the big brush, but I'm just going really everywhere. No detail. It's all about coverage. If you leave some areas see-through, as I mentioned, that's fine. That's perfectly fine. Even if you see some of this turquoise, it's really adds some very special effects. You'll see it later. So I'm just adding some more over here. Have everything looks almost abstract. Just continue over that bridge too. Just continue down, because this color is everywhere pretty much. We are not gonna paint that bridge yet. We just very painterly, in a very painterly way, we're introducing this warm tone. So again, yellow, orange, continuing here, maybe painting around this tree a little bit. And have your brush strokes in all kinds of directions. The same color is gonna go down here under that bridge. So almost cover all this turquoise, but see how it shows through? There is a bit of slight transparency that you can see through, and maybe some of the brush strokes are left, so you can see it here and there. It shouldn't be all painted perfect. Like, we're not painting super smooth paintings that you see in wine and design. This is completely different. So we're just painters, and we're just adding some more warmth, orange, yellow. Here, just adding this color everywhere. We're not even painting any reflection yet. Again, squint your eyes, 2 eyes, both eyes, and just see maps, just blobs of values and color here and there. So here is this orange, here is maybe another orange. We'll go back to it. There is another, well, that tree is gonna have to come here, then there maybe is another, but again, no details, none of it. Here is gonna be more orange. I'm just putting very, very roughly on these brush strokes. And if you have a flat brush, you can get a lot of coverage right away, very quickly. And the water is used only just to clean your brush, really, and maybe put a little dab of color of, you know, water, just so you can have some movement in your paint. But generally, you know, don't paint now with too much water. Now we're starting to build this painting little by little. Now we have the dark value, we have the medium value, and see how that first layer in the very back has this intense light. That's where the source of light is, I think. It's obviously creating these nice silhouettes. So we're going to indicate that very light value right there. So I'm gonna grab generous amount of white, generous, just grabbing it, and again, very, very roughly, in a very painterly style. Don't try to paint super smooth. I'm just gonna quickly indicate some white right here, because I know that's where my white is going to be. Don't worry if yellow shows through, if green is showing through. We're just again mapping. So here we're mapping the light right now. It goes around this tree. I'm mapping a bit. And if it starts blending because your paint is still wet, that's fine. Yeah, blending is perfectly fine, as long as that's not starting to create mud on your canvas. That's okay. And you still have, you know, the value of that light. And here I see another light right here where this bridge is. I'm just gonna pop some light, if you can see it. So we just pop some light right there. So now slowly we're going to start building from the very back forward. We have the white, and mine is sort of mixing with the yellow underneath. So if you want to really have a serious white that is really white, I'll grab a knife and get some white and kind of do a little blob right here, because that's where it's going to be the whitest white, and just have already build a nice thick amount of white. And right on top of it, we will be painting all the trees and the branches and everything else. But I just want to make sure that my values are correct. So we're popping some white right here. I see some light right there. And if you don't do this right away, you can always add this later. Let me know if you're somewhere near this stage and you're ready to move on, or I can wait a little bit.
I think I'm ready. I don't know if everybody else.
Yay! Perfect.
Not ready yet. Still putting white on. Still putting white on.
Okay. All right. Next we will start painting these trees from the very back. So those trees are slightly darker than this yellow background that we did. So now we have a choice to either paint them with a knife or grab a brush. I'll just take a brush and I'll just paint them with a brush. Some flat brushes are great for that purpose. So I'm grabbing like a half inch, and we will have the first layer, that's the very back, slightly lighter than anything in the front, and we'll build everything in the front. Is going to be high contrast, but right now we're all the way in the back. So if you guys want to mix a color of those trees, I'll just grab orange. If you have brown on your palette, you can use brown a little bit, just darker orange, but I'm not using any brown, so I'm mixing orange, red, again a little bit of that purple to darken it, and that will immediately give me a nice warm, very nice warm brown. Are we close? Yes? No?
Sure.
Yeah, perfect. Awesome. So as you can see, okay, so I just mixed orange, red, purple, and it gave me this nice brown right here. So here I see trees, and I'm going to very freely like try to now give some shape to these trees. There's one here that you see, and if your background is painted very thickly, it may start mixing with your paint. Try not to mix it and like lay it once and to be there, like don't lose your color, don't mix it on your canvas. That's not your all mixing should be on the actual palette, not on your canvas. So here I see, you know, another tree popping up. Oh, that, wait a minute, that is my medium, like that's layer 2, don't worry. So we're gonna even lighten this even more. So I'll get the orange, and see there's some faded trees right behind that. That was the whole goal, to show you, you know, the 3 layers. So I'd like to show you the 3 layers. So the first one is very faded orange, that almost similar value as the background. It's okay if you painted these darker trees, that's gonna be the second layer, but it's okay. So we're going back to that all the way in the back. So we're getting an orange, a nice orange. They're kind of close to value anyway, but so here I see some almost interesting disappearing silhouettes right under that bridge. All right, so here's some stuff. So yeah, you can have some kind of brush strokes here with things that are hard to see. There's another tree. There is another one. So yeah, it doesn't have to be all completely perfect. As I said, they appear, disappear, you know, they shouldn't be like soldiers, 1, 2, 3 with the same distance among each other. It's very important when we paint nature, I've said it before, to make sure that it's looking chaotic, kind of, not too organized. So things are never the same distance between each other. They're not completely straight. There's some tilted, some rugged, some going in different directions. And I see an interesting tree that is against this light right here, tree trunk that's showing. Let's indicate that. It kind of disappears into the light, and there's a whole bunch of other trees popping in, and you can use a thinner brush for some of these branches, because now little by little we will start introducing some of these details. But again, that's all the way in the back. Still trying to be as rough as we can. There is some texture of the leaves in that very far background. So I'll take a really brush that has hairs kind of spread out all over. I'm gonna use this big brush and get some of this orange, and you can kind of do this dab to just create a little bit of texture. These are leaves. If you can do that. If you don't have a big brush, you can do this with a different brush that is not that great, kind of like spread out all these hairs and do a little bit of texture, orange, dab. We've seen this in Bob Ross. I think Bob Ross or any of these artists, some of those, they do this stuff. So here it does create a nice, interesting texture. So these are all these light orange that we see, maybe can have a dash of red there too. And now we are going to go into that middle layer, the one in the middle, where we will paint slightly darker trees that are gonna look like they're in front of these lighter trees if we use a darker value. Okay, so again, same brush, which is, where did it go? Oh, I'm holding it. I'm holding it. Okay, so here we have red and a little bit of purple to darken it a bit, so it's going to be a darker value. So if you have brown, but if you have brown, just pop in some red in it, so it's not, sometimes brown could be really dead unless it's burnt sienna, then it's nice and warm, but just pop in some red. So I'm just taking really nice orange and purple, and that is the color I'm going to use for that middle layer. And maybe there's some nice line going all the way, and just have fun now with these trees, because that is the time when we start building little by little. And there's one right here that belongs to that middle layer. It goes up, maybe something a little bit darker here, and now there's just leaves, maybe some leaves, some dark areas. It looks like a fall scene, sorry. Just wanted a different color. I know we are spring, we are painting, during the spring we are painting a fall scene, isn't that funny? But we just want to experiment with different colors really, and we like these forest scenes. So now you can take a pointy brush and maybe now start adding some more details, because now it's the middle ground, so yeah, it will have some details. So again, I'm mixing orange with purple and getting these little trees, and you can have red in it again. So don't worry about the rays of light at all, just have some of these branches and maybe some of these interesting leaves. And again, you can just take a brush, spread out all these hairs. Don't use any water, because the water is going to make the brush behave nice and perfect. Just use it as a dry brush and just start adding darker leaves on top of these. So you can just even get pure red with some more purple to get some of these darker leaves. Dab it. Don't be too organized again. So now, since I can just keep working on the very top, we're gonna start moving a little bit here at this reflection, because these colors are going to be the same colors at the bottom reflecting, but looking slightly softer. But before I go to that, I'm going to still just continue adding some more of these nice branches, lines. Again, make sure that nothing is parallel, they're just going in different direction. Use thinner pointier brush, because supposedly this is that medium ground that is far away, so lines will be thinner and all these branches will be a little bit different. So here is that red tree in the back. Branches. There is a nice orange tree here, maybe with some branches. And sometimes you can take your palette knife and you can do some lines with it, kind of sliding it vertically to create some more texture and lines. We'll get to the palette knife later, but yeah, with a very dry brush, start adding some red, like a different value for these trees, slightly darker now, because that is that medium layer. And maybe a little bit red over here. We see it, just dab it. And now I'm gonna start moving. Here there is another branch here of some other trees. Has some red in it. Definitely it is very red. So I'm just popping in some quite red. And again, very dry brush, no water at all. So when you tap it, you're gonna see how it leaves some really cool texture. That's still medium ground, that second layer. Okay. And this whole red is actually going to continue into the bridge down here. We're just going to continue, so keep dabbing with this same technique. So a nice warm red. I have this almost like orange red. It's really nice. So here it pops also here. Now we're moving to that other foreground where there's some brush, like lower level trees, not so bright, not so tall. Here is light coming up. And again, just using this dry brush technique, we're gonna start adding value. The value is like lighter, slightly lighter. We're building on top of the dark now. We're just building, adding depth. Here is some more red on top of that purple, a little bit here. And even though we're moving, you know, from the very back to the front, we will go back to the very back eventually, but now we're just doing the basics. We're just adding the basics. I'm just adding here, like behind that bridge, I think there is some of this orange. There's a lot of orange as a matter of fact, so maybe you can dab some yellow too. So definitely some yellow. And softer, because it's far away, so we don't worry so much. Again, I'm just grabbing my warm red, and yeah, you can just use a really pure color on top of this, and it's going to, when you squint your eventually it's gonna really look like a nice sophisticated color, although you did use pure pigment on top of another. So the eye has created this optical illusion, and it does mix up the colors in your brain. So that's what the Impressionists did, really. Like put a lot of colors next to each other, just different brush strokes, and they could be completely different, but all together create this symphony of stuff. So again, very dry brush. I see some darker brush strokes. This whole texture does represent basically leaves and foliage and whatever you see there. So slightly lighter, Okay, and now in this whole dark area here, where the reflection is, just start making again colors that you see, but don't worry about any lines yet. All these lines I'm just going to kind of see it all as big blobs. So I see some red, some orange. We will add the darks if we lost some of the darks. Just want to introduce some more color here, and you can have some vertical strokes too. They don't have to be all horizontal. We will add the horizontal lines with some darks, which we will add in a sec. So here I'm just adding some more orange here. Again, as vertical strokes, because that does show as reflection a lot of the times. There's some red over here. Again, look at it from a very, very abstract point of view. Don't try to paint anything specific yet, other than just blobs of color at this point, and worrying about our values pretty much. Alright, and if you don't have too much yellow here, that behind that bridge, I know that there's lots of yellow, so I'm just going to introduce this yellow before we paint that bridge. I'm gonna just pop in some bright yellow. There is I know that there is a nice bright yellow here that I probably should have painted before, but yeah, it's never too late, so we're just adding it. I know it's a bit on the bright side, but hey, that creates a nice vibrant painting, and you can always tone it down a little bit with a cooler tone. And we're going to use our turquoise really to tone down some of our colors, but that's going to be towards the end, not yet. Right now we're just popping really nice and bright colors. I'm just adding some more of this yellow that I see. Around that bridge. I don't want to leave it, green. So it's going to be, you can still see some green. So get into the habit of not filling in. Like, let's say you have a shape. We don't fill it in. It's not paint by numbers. We just kind of dab and go roughly around the shape, into the shape, and we just build it. And that's my fan downstairs. I hope it doesn't just detach from the ceiling. It makes this weird sound. So, okay, so here we have some more light. A little bit more light. And definitely, if you squint your eyes, you will see around the bridge, you know how I added this yellow? Just ignore, the darks for now. There is some yellow, and right underneath, again, is that orange. So we're now introducing a little bit more subtlety, like some subtle tones. So I'm introducing some more orange maybe here. And again, just by dabbing, nothing too concrete. Couple of lines here. Now I'm just starting to see, and just a bit of orange. That's it. I mean, the rougher and the bigger you start and seeing the big picture, the easier your life will be as a painter. And eventually, just painting only a few details eventually that are so important, only a few, we will be very choosy as to what's important. You see how your painting is gonna look really professional, and you reach mastery at some point. So I'm just adding some different brush strokes. Some are orange again. And now we can have maybe some of this. Just make this a little bit richer. That is that reflection. Maybe some orange here. Seeing it in a very abstract way. I cannot stress this enough. Just always see it in a very abstract way, and just the more you see it as an abstract, the better your life will be, and the details are gonna really pull it off. So here we go. I want to pop in, some more bright red here. See that now the subtlety. Now we're starting to see some subtle things here. There's really bright red right here on that tree. So again, with the very dark, not dark, dry brush with the spread out hairs, I'm just gonna dab here. So we add tones. We add a little bit of tones. I need to be aware of the time. Whoa, what time do we have? Is that 6:50? Oh, do we have only 10 minutes? No. Oh, it's still 7:30. Oh, we have 40 minutes.
7:30.
7:30. Good. Okay, 40 minutes. Oh, we have time. We have plenty of time. Okay, so now see how I grabbed a little bit of a warmer red, like really nice warm red. And now I'm starting to add some more accents here where the light is gonna fall, but that's gonna be my very last touch with the light, so I'm not getting too overboard with that. Just adding, just squint your eyes, see how on top of this dark red you have some brighter red. And here there's a little cluster, maybe it's some bright, maybe here you can just dab. So if you see a color somewhere, introduce it somewhere else. I'm sure it's probably somewhere here. That creates for a very nice unified painting. So here maybe that red will probably reflect most likely. And of course don't go too crazy, so just here and there. And of course it's gonna look nicer and nicer the more we add to it. Now here is some red, some dabs. Okay, so now let's introduce those dark trees, and that's gonna pull everything together. And it's gonna create the focus. So I'm getting my 1/2" brush and mix a really dark tone. These two trees on the right are very dark, so I'm gonna just get indigo. This indigo tone, I may not even mix it. Maybe a little bit even of black, a dash of red, not too much so it doesn't look blue, but I will paint here now this tree. Be very bold. And if you get this dry brush, that's great. Just lightly slide it, and here just go all the way out, and it gets a bit thicker on one side, and we're going to add some more branches, but see how this is now our foreground, and they're way darker. So right on top here is that tree, a little dry brush. Make sure you maintain that darkness, so don't let it mix too much with what's going on underneath. Now a little bit, like, let's introduce some reds, because we don't want this dark to be everywhere. I'm going to paint these trees right here on the left. So we're starting from here. Again, they're kind of slanted, tilted. I know they look parallel. I'm gonna actually avoid that and make this more rugged. Anything parallel bothers the eye, because we have now two parallel, two on the right, two on the left. I'm gonna immediately break that parallels and maybe create something right behind, like it's over there, so that some redder, still warm, still dark, but a little bit more red right behind. Let's darken these a little bit. So now we introduce this foreground, and with the same brush with slightly more red, we're going to paint this reflection of that tree. So make sure it's right underneath, so it's not to the left, not to the right, it's right where it should be. And we go down vertical and start stop. It shouldn't be as sharp as the actual tree. It should disappear a little bit more. And there's another one, and here we see now some darks right here, and you can break it up. I'll show you how we're going to break it up with some of our knife work, but now still we're adding some more dark. So right here where the bridge is meeting the water, that is going to be very dark. So I'm just adding some more dark with that indigo color, maybe dash of red to just keep it on the warm side. And I know that is the bottom of that area here where the foliage is meeting the water. Just maintain this soft feel to it. We will add to this area some more. Take a dry brush, the ones that we use for these leaves, and a very dry brush. Just grab some dark and add with a dry brush some dab here to paint these textures of leaves, because here we got some more dark. I know there's a lot of stuff going on, but don't worry so much now about all these details. We will get to it with a smaller brush. So we're just now still building values. So again, we're introducing a little bit more darks, like the darkest dark, right? Okay, so here with this same dark, okay, so maybe a little bit of purple, red, indigo, like a nice dark tone. We're going to show the reflection of the bridge, and it's right here, and we'll break it. I know it looks perfect, but we will break it with some horizontal. And as you put it, just paint some horizontal lines with that dark tone that you have. Just paint some horizontal smaller lines over it. That does create this feeling of reflection. And again, now it's time to dab on the left, some indigo. Now pay attention to some of these shapes, because that's supposedly your foreground. So yeah, maybe there is some more interesting shape right here popping up. It shouldn't be too black, so I'm just adding some more red. Just kind of a red dark on top of this purple. Purple should now be a complementary behind all this. So now we're just adding the darkest of the dark, and we will move on to, and again, just dab mimicking some of these foliage shapes. Now we're going to paint the bridge, and the bridge has some very refined thin lines. So I'm gonna get a smaller pointy brush and just get the basic shape of the bridge. Don't worry too much about, there's a lot of cool structure and elements. We'll get to it if we have time, but here I'm gonna first the very top line, very thinly and boldly. Don't worry too much, just have a kind of a nice dark line, thin. If you can just paint very thinly, that will be great. And if you can do it, if it is stop, that's fine, because this is all, there's air from the viewer to there. There's like 30 feet, so nothing is completely obvious. When we look at nature, things appear, disappear. So again, this bridge continues. Then there is another line here, kind of going. Okay, so let's see, the bottom is going to be here. And don't worry if you make a mistake, because of course this is acrylic, you can paint over it. There is another. If your paint is too dry, definitely add some water to it. I'm just adding a thicker line for this bridge over right here, this element. And now we have these verticals, these vertical posts that are really neat. They're kind of thick. There's one over here, 1, 2, 3, right in the middle. You can take your small, if you have a small palette knife, and paint these elements actually now with a palette knife. So I'm grabbing red, indigo, and kind of have these railings. One, just dabbing it with a palette knife. It does create some nice, very straight lines. Anything made human created has this whole straight, perfect look. So yeah, it's okay to have that painted perfect because it creates a nice contrast between nature and man-made objects. So here we have a bunch of lines using the palette knife here. And I'm taking lots of paint really with my palette knife. It's very thick. So, and I'm just using the edge to create these lines. So tap the edge, ta-da, and that immediately creates some nice cool lines that are pretty straight and thin. The brush, no matter how thin the brush is still gonna make very rough, thick lines. So there's like X's here. There's one X. So use your knife, get some paint on it, and just use the edge. And now you see it, now you don't. Don't worry if it's not a perfect line. Again, this is far away. We don't see perfect when something is far away, but we want to make it as straight as possible. So sometimes these knives help. And again, there's light behind, so that creates this interesting shimmery effect. There's an additional element, kind of a rectangle going in the middle. I do this all with a knife. So knife, 1, 2, 3, 4, that's it. And see, it doesn't look super perfect, but at least it looks straight. That's what's important. That's what I'm after. We don't want it to look too wiggly schmiggly. If there's such a word, I'm making it up. Okay, so here is all these lines. And of course, we can always refine these with some light, painting in the negative shape. I just want to indicate some of these nice, cool elements. So here, there's something going this way. Just keep working on that bridge if you can with your darks. And I'm using indigo, red. There's these X's, kind of X, X. It continues on this side. Some more straight lines. Alright, so I'll just take a smaller brush and do the same for the reflection. Again, reflection should be maybe slightly lighter, so I'm just gonna get some red in it and introduce similar shapes. So if thicker line is here, it should be exactly on the same location in the reflection. It shouldn't be left or right. It should be exactly mirror. Going down here. And maybe some other lines going here. I need to pay attention to the time, 7:04. Okay, so we're doing very good. So now the next will be very quickly with our knife. We're gonna start creating this ultra cool reflection. So just very quickly with your darker tone, add these nice darker lines. So these are possibly either trees or it's the bridge most likely. It's hard to see, but just try to be a little bit rougher and not so precise with the reflection. because we don't see quite. So again, if there is a thick line here, it's gonna be thick line here. So just again, mirror, mirror. There's 3, 1, 2, 3. And obviously darker here in the middle. Okay, they're definitely darker. There's you can add some cool things like little dots right here on the very top. Maybe there is some decorative stuff, just a little bit. Okay, so the trees again are reflecting here, and we have some darks. So now we can take a slightly bigger brush with a, if it has a point, that's good. We're gonna mix purple and red. Keep it dark though, very dark value. And we're gonna go with very horizontal kind of wiggly lines here to build some reflection. So as you can see here, it definitely gets darker as we come closer to us. So I'm just putting some dry brush. Again, some horizontal, very dry brush. Now you see it, now you don't. Here maybe there's some verticals. So reflection is vertical, horizontal, vertical, horizontal. That's how it goes. And slightly lighter reflection of trees right here in the back. And we will break it. So if you have something vertical, just break it with some thinner lines across. This tree is right behind here. And again, nothing is really perfect. We're just gonna go back and forth. We're gonna start introducing light, and of course this interesting, cool sun rays that we see in the back, and through the leaves. That's going to be introduced. So now we're going to take our, if you have a bigger knife, we're going to do shimmery light, like highlights on the water, and that's going to really make your painting pop. So I'll just grab some bright yellow, and you see how we have bright yellow here, and I'm just going to start popping it, like move it as if butter again to create this texture, and just do it in a horizontal kind of fashion. That creates some really nice, interesting highlights. It's nice and bright. If you don't want it so bright, you can tone it down with some orange if you have, but these are highlights that we're adding. So here obviously there is some highlights over here I see. They're not perfect again, don't make them too mathematical, precise. Some are again going in this horizontal way. Some are just dots because it's shimmery white everywhere. In some areas maybe a little bit less, a little bit more. Obviously a lot of nice warm going in the background. So bright kind of in this area behind the bridge. So I'm lightening it up. I know it's a little bit lighter here, and see how you still see some of this turquoise, and we will pop it in some areas. Hopefully we'll have enough time to show you this. These are called the finishing touches, the accents. So I'm still working on the highlights right now. So yellow, a little bit of white, and here I'm just a dash of highlights right there. They're very bright, like squint your eyes and see how they're super bright, really. So make sure they're bright in your painting as well. That's gonna create a very nice look and values. So I'm gonna take slightly smaller knife and start adding some smaller lines here. As you can see, like if you move lightly, creates texture, and just dab with your knife. And you can even get your brush, a bigger brush, and create some spatter with white or light color, yellow and white, and just spatter. So these are, imagine, leaves that are fallen, or some sort of sparkles. As we say always, nature is very chaotic, there's lots of stuff happening, so I always spatter a little bit, don't go overboard, but there's some spatter, and you can always, kill some. So I'm still taking my bright now, yellow white, and really emphasizing some of this interesting highlighted areas. So there's some highlighted leaves right here in the brushes, so just put some depth there. There's some that's showing through. Okay, I have some over here, maybe over there, like exactly nothing should be perfect again, as long as you have nice bright value. And oh, I'm missing some interesting branches going across. Here we need to get these dark branches, and I'm just going to kind of paint them roughly. We see some cool horizontal branches going everywhere. You can do this with a dry brush, a little bit of water. If you can't see them, definitely add some more water, that's it. But generally, there should be a lot of branches, and mine are starting to look too thick here, so I'm just dabbing a little bit with a big brush. Nothing should be perfect. If your branches get to look too thick, get some water. Just make a watery dark tone, and that's gonna get you some thinner lines. The beauty of painting fast is there's no overthinking it. We're just moving quickly from one area to another, and again, no time to worry, to overthink, to fret, and go into all kinds of self-defeating practices. So here we go, and we are getting very close to creating our light with a glaze, just like the last time. Before the glaze though, I still want to add some highlight, so I'm gonna grab some of this very bright yellow, a dash of white, and there's some quite cool highlights popping through this bridge. That's going to bring your eye onto the bridge. Just put a couple of dashes of dots, lines right under here. Not everywhere perfectly, obviously, light creates these now you see and now you don't type of situations, shimmers. It's the beauty of nature and how we really perceive it. So there is a nice shimmery effect. Like here we can just do some light here with lightly moving your knife over here. See how it just created some texture right away. Also a little bit of light here, just move your knife on this left area where the brushes are. You can use now a redder tone because some of these bushes are getting some red here. Now some yellow and white here showing through. I'm I'm still getting some white right here. If I lost some of it, just dab boldly to show this light through. And when you squint your eye, it's going to look realistic. If you lost some of the white, just add it here. Maybe there's some more here. Obviously, there's still some white. And again, at your own time, you can add a million branches here, as many branches as you want, like a refined work with some dark tone. After all, it's all dry. You can just definitely add some more darks and details. But these are the highlights that really is going to pull your painting together. It's going to take it to a very finished look, because it is showing what's going on. And again, I see here some very nice bright light right here, so I'm just adding it with my knife, just like that. There's more right there. You can just slightly just slide it again here. As long as we have the values, we're on the good side. So here we go again, maybe. And again, soft, hard, small, big. Always think of opposites. Always think of variety. Our painting shouldn't feel the same everywhere. Some areas should feel a bit softer, some should feel a bit, more refined. And obviously we have a focal point, this bridge, so I will pay special attention to it and how to pop it with maybe some yellow showing through. It's almost like super bright light right there. I'm almost putting it in a kind of an abstract way, adding some of this yellow here, and almost lost my tree. So yeah, you can quickly add it if you lost some of that quick tree trunk, but that's okay. It's behind, so that's that other level, so it doesn't really matter that much. Here we have some more. Sometimes I use even my fingers. Yeah, if I'm in a hurry, if I want something really softer, I just soften it with my finger, or you could just use a paper towel really to soften certain things. So here, just add some more light right here. And now, well, my painting seemed pretty dry already as I'm painting, because I haven't used pretty much any water, especially for these highlights. So I think it's pretty dry. I'm gonna take and, oh, I'm missing a bush here. Okay, let's create some yellow and white, and with a knife I'm just gonna slightly kind of create this highlighted area right here. That's where all these leaves are, and just adding a little dark underneath. Immediately it's gonna give you a three-dimensional shape. I really wanted to make sure that this is a nice substantial bridge. Okay, so here we have some darker underneath. Don't overdo it, not too much detail. I know sometimes we can get lost in the detail, but yeah, just adding more is okay. So here I have purple, red and purple, a little bit of different medium value there. I'm just adding another something going on here, slightly darker, and that adds another dimension, more dimension. And again, with the smaller brush you can refine this as much as you want, and you can be ultra realistic, but that should be your starting point really. And for some it's the finish point. For others, maybe just, oh, I want to add a million branches. That's fine too. Your yellow should be now your nice little accent highlight here that we see. And maybe over here I'm just adding because I see it in some area. But if it seems too sharp, you can always, now you can actually blend with a drier brush that you haven't used. You can actually blend. If you see something that seems too sharp and it's still wet, you can actually soften it by just blending with a dry brush that has nothing on it. And there is something called highlights, like little accent. I mean, not highlights, sorry, accent. So I can take a little bit of turquoise and only very, very few areas, minimally. See how I have a little bit here and there around the bridge? You can just add some dots of this because you need something to cool this really warm painting. So you need some balance. I'm going to introduce a little bit of turquoise right here with my knife, just a little bit, and somewhere here in the shadow area. It's going to be in the shadow because shadows are cold. So I'm just slightly dabbing it, just minimally, and maybe it will be also in the reflection. But it shouldn't look like anything, just very, very light, and maybe some over here. But definitely some tiny highlight of turquoise in the shadow, and that does make a richer tone, more sophisticated painting. It's not all, duotone, red and black. It has a little bit of more dimension to it when you introduce slightly cooler. And mine is like super bright, so I can tone down some of it and create a nice gray. Grays are fantastic to neutralize some of the super bright. So I'm putting red and turquoise, and it's going to give me a gray, really a nice gray. And that gray, I'm going to introduce it maybe here at this area. I have a feeling that maybe we are running out of time, but now we're going to have a glaze with a nice flat brush that we haven't used. Nice flat brush with water. We're going to have a glaze all over. So just a little puddle of white and yellow and white, so it's nice and warm. And we're going to have a nice watery glaze all over. Make sure you use water. So this should be really like watercolor, a puddle, transparent, because we want to keep what's underneath, what we painted underneath. We want to keep it. So I'm just having some light kind of streaks like that. See how I still see what's underneath? It's almost like a veil on top of it. So that does create this sense of light going through. And if it looks too streaky, like in my case, you can always sort of dab a little bit with your paper towel to lose some of the streaks. If what's underneath is still wet, it's gonna start mixing. So for the glaze to work, you have to have a dry background. Excuse me. All right, my voice is drying. Okay, so here there is another streak of light glaze on the right. It's going to go straight through, and maybe a dash of orange, so maybe it's not, but as long as it's transparent, clean water, puddle. Let's see what it looks like if we do this. Right. So if it looks too intentional, I dab some of it, because in nature it wouldn't be, so perfect. It's just foggy, it's dreamy, it's not as obvious. And it does create softness, which is hard. With acrylic, softness is very hard, because acrylic, as we all know, dries, and it does create these harsh edges. So we can always have a bit of a glaze on top of all these harsher edges. Just like we did with the previous painting of the green forest. So this is kind of similar. And you can have a yellow, maybe a yellow, a little bit of a yellow glaze going over this. I don't want to lose the darkness of these brushes, so, and I don't want these to look like lines. So again, I'm just gonna dab some of it and reintroduce some of the darks if we lost them. And I'm close to finish. Of course, at this point it's just a matter of just adding some more details, but we got the basic, we have everything pretty much that we need. Now it's just finalizing, maybe some of the elements of the bridge, some more. I would just add some more branches here because these dark branches would make a nice detail. So I'm just adding some more stuff, reintroducing some of the darks that I lost. And here actually the light is bringing out making some of these foliage to look orange. So I'm gonna maybe add some details with that. Okay. And again, you can also take the knife and keep building as much as you can to make a nice complicated painting. As long as you have the basics, now you can, with a knife you can get some nice bright red, orange, and put some dashes across in horizontal lines. Or maybe some going in more of a diagonal. I don't know what's happening over there. Maybe some more red. Here in the foreground is obviously some more contrast. Just squint your eyes, and I need some more yellow. But yeah, feel free to show me what you guys have. I know we are not finished. I know it probably definitely needs some more work, but it's all a matter of just adding some more detail. Okay, I'm looking. Oh, awesome! Whoa, Linda, good job. Andrea, I'm looking at it. Great. You guys doing fantastic. You did a fabulous work. Just take knife and build some thicker, like build it up, like impasto, as they say. Impasto. And just keep jabbing with the knife everywhere, and that's great texture. Did you enjoy this one? I'm sure it is. There's Jill. Oh wow, fabulous. You guys so free. I love it. I love the bridge. I love the light behind. I love the colors. You're really introducing a lot of colors, which is fabulous. I love that.
I wanted to say thank you. I've got to run off.
Okay.
I appreciate your time and setting up the class. It was really good.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you. You did a fabulous job. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Very educational.
I will post another video.